So welcome everybody to ActiveRain University. Today we're going to talk about how to rank in the search engines. And my name is Bob Stewart, and I always use this slide as an opportunity to let everybody know I do not consider myself an SEO expert. I would never call myself that. The stuff that I'm going to share with you today is things that we've learned over 10 years or 11 years now. It's been a while of getting content to rank in the search engines. And we originally did this as a brokerage. We had our own brokerage in the Seattle area, and we got very good at getting our website to rank in the search engines. And then for the last 7 or 8 years, we've been doing this at ActiveRain, where we've been helping our members and the agents and the different professionals of ActiveRain write content that ranks in the search engine. So an SEO expert is one of those hacks that would call you up on the phone and say, I can get you to rank on the first page of the search engines for free, or for $500 a month. Look, the reality is none of us really have any more insight than is able for anyone else to get as it relates to Google, right? We don't get secret emails from Google letting us know what's going on. This is all just based on our experiences. So I'm going to share with you some of the experience that I've seen over the last 7 years of doing this with ActiveRain, and then what our members are doing in order to get their content ranking in the search engines. So I kind of gave you why spend the next 60 minutes with me. This stuff is important, guys, right? We have really two ways now that we can compete online. We can either work for it or we can pay for it. And so I'm going to show you the way, not just over the next hour, but over the course of this whole boot camp series. I'm going to show you how you can get into the search engines, how you can get your content ranking, and how ultimately that could potentially lead to leads for your business. And again, it's going to be a series of classes we're going to do, and I'm going to reference some of the classes. But you're going to spend the next 60 minutes with me because we're going to talk about SEO and how to get our content to rank as a first step to generating leads with our blog. Now, when we're talking about search engine optimization, I'm really going to be talking about Google. And Google sends about 68% of the traffic to the greater internet. It sends about that same percentage to ActiveRain member content. So the same things that we talk about today and as we talk about throughout the course of this bootcamp series, these same principles are going to apply to a Bing or a Yahoo. But I'll just use the word Google probably to mean search engines. Bing is actually really the only other search engine out there. Like, they power Yahoo now today. And so if we're doing the same things that I'm going to talk about here in the sense of Google, now those things are going to work for Bing, and like I said, Yahoo is now powered by Bing. Now, what we ultimately want to accomplish, and what you guys are looking at here, is just a set of blog posts from one of our members, and I'm going to use this lady as an example throughout the series. Her name is Katrina Benton. This is what we want to accomplish, and what you see in that right-hand column there is the number of visitors that she's had to blog posts that she's written about very particular things in her market. And in this case, it's kind of a snapshot of some posts that she's written about either different neighborhoods or maybe different condo complexes, but very specific to real estate in her market. And we'll see that these different posts, some of them have 200 views, some of them are 300 clicks or 500 clicks, so there's one in there that has 1,000 clicks. What we're trying to accomplish is this. We're trying to accomplish getting content written that ultimately ranks in the search engines and leads to traffic for us. And then in some subsequent classes, we'll talk about how we can take that traffic and turn it into leads or prospects for our business. But what we're trying to do is get some good content out there that's going to rank in the search engines, and I'll show you some of that today. And then ultimately get people visiting our blog posts. So SEO is an interesting thing because it's always changing just a little bit, and Google's always releasing some kind of a panda or a penguin or some kind of an update to their algorithm. But the foundation of search engine optimization is really built on these things, and there's not too many people out there who are really SEO experts. Rand Fishkin, who's the CEO at it's Moz now, it used to be SEO Moz, put this pyramid together and basically said search engine optimization is built on these things. And at the bottom of that pyramid in the purple there, you see content quality and accessibility. And what accessibility means is, what do I do on the page to allow the search engine to get in there and understand what I'm trying to share with them? So we're going to talk today mainly about that bottom piece of the pyramid. Quality, how do I create quality content, and then how do I make it accessible so that when a search engine sees it, that they see what I want them to see and hopefully return a result for me that puts me somewhere in finding range, right? And generally that's going to be on the first page of a search result. Now these other things, keyword research and targeting, that's what we're going to talk about in the second class of this. So today we're going to talk about how we get our content to rank. Next week we're going to talk all about keywords. Like, what keywords should I be writing about? How should I be thinking about constructing my keywords? We're really going to get a good hour all about keywords. Link building, which is kind of this next component of search engine optimization. So as long as we have good content and we're writing it in a fashion where the search engines can find it, as long as we're writing about things that people out there are interested in, then there's this component of link building. And in the last class of this bootcamp series, we're going to look at link building, calls to action, things we can do inside of a post to generate leads, but also to help our own websites perform better, and so that becomes link building. And then there's this piece on social, and I think the third class will be about social, how to share, and how that impacts and helps our blog posts perform better. So we're going to cover all of kind of the fundamentals of SEO from one aspect or another. And again, today we're going to start with kind of that foundation, building quality content and making sure we're doing the right things inside of that content so that it's accessible to the search engine. So there's a concept that I want to make sure everybody understands, because it's really going to be kind of it's how I want you to look at the content that you're creating. So the concept is called the long tail, and the long tail applies and was actually first kind of introduced around the idea of how Amazon sells books. And so when Amazon set out to become the #1 bookseller in the world, they looked at the competition, and at that time the competition was places like Barnes & Noble or Border Books, right? These physical bookstores. And Amazon saw that in the book industry in any given year there were a very small number of titles. It might have been 20 or 30 titles that made up the majority of the book sales. And it was actually not the majority. It was like 30%. But it was only 20 books. 20 books of all the millions of books that are out there, 20 or 30 books in a given year make up 30% of the sales. But what happens is there's this long tail of books that get sold where any one book might only get sold a limited number of times. It might only be sold 10 times in a given year, and another book might sell 8 times, and another book might sell 15 times. The cumulative of all of those other books make up 70% of the sales, but no one of those books sells very often. And so what Amazon was able to do, because they didn't have to stock those books, right? They didn't have to physically stock a book that only sells 8 times, there's no way that a Barnes & Noble store could sell that book, because the chances that the person who wants to buy that book is going to walk into that particular Barnes & Noble is almost impossible. And so they couldn't stock those books, but Amazon could, because they didn't have to worry about the physical inventory of the books. And so cumulatively what Amazon did is I mean, eventually they would sell those big sellers, right? The John Grishams, the Harry Potter books, those kinds of things. But they built their business on selling on the long tail, on selling all of those books that you just couldn't find at that time. But Amazon was able to stock them and ultimately deliver them. Now, something similar happens in search, where there's, in any one of our given markets, there are about 8 to 10 terms that make up 30% of the search traffic. These are going to be terms like homes for sale in Seattle, Seattle real estate, Seattle houses for sale, Seattle condos, right? These kind of more basic terms that are getting searched in our market. But what happens is there is this huge number of terms that no one of these terms gets searched for very often, but the cumulative of these terms make up a huge percentage of the search traffic. So as we look at this, like, you got real estate, right? And it's actually funny to me that people really do just search real estate, or really do just search homes for sale, and don't tell the search engine where. Now, Google's smart enough these days to figure out if I'm sitting here in San Jose and I type in homes for sale, I probably want them somewhere close to me. But people search these real general terms, and you can see as we kind of move down the graph there, Arizona real estate would be a little bit more specific. Now, Chandler, Arizona real estate, or Chandler real estate, or Chandler homes for sale, that's where we start to get into your market, right? And that's where in any one of your markets there's about, like I said, 6 to 8 terms. Past that, where you see search phrases like cheap short sale homes for sale in Arizona. Now that phrase is very much a long tail phrase, and what that means is it doesn't get searched for very often, but there's all kinds of phrases like this out there. And I want you guys to keep this in mind, especially next week as we really drill into keywords, but even this week as I show you some of the examples of what folks are writing about and how they're getting content to rank. And then as we look at this, the lady that we're going to use as an example, Katrina Benton, I want you to see how she realizes that this concept of the long tail can lead to a bunch of traffic, but no one post that she writes is going to generate a ton on its own, right? It's going to be the cumulative of all of those posts. Now, something else interesting about the long tail is at the bottom there, what you can see is the further out on the long tail you get, the higher the conversion rate. And what that means is the higher likelihood that the person who's doing the search is going to be interested in what they're searching for sooner. And this really came to life for us when we had our real estate company, and we did very well in the search engines. And one of the things that we found is that when somebody did a search like homes for sale in Seattle, or in this case, homes for sale in Chandler, they were about 8 months on average away from getting in the car with one of our real estate agents. When they did a search that got more specific than a city level, so in Seattle we have lots of communities. We've got Green Lake, Capitol Hill, Ballard. When they would do a search like homes for sale in Ballard, Seattle, they would get into the car with one of our agents much quicker, on an average of 121 days, which means the more specific their search behavior got, the closer they were to actually doing something. And it makes sense, right? If somebody searched condos in Seattle, are they going to be, you think they're going to be buying sooner or later than somebody that searched loft condos in Belltown, Seattle, right? They know they want a loft condo. They know they want to live in this very specific area of Seattle. That person's a lot further along the line than the guy that just does condos in Seattle. So just keep that concept in your mind, and it will really come to life for throughout the rest of the hour, and then definitely next week as we talk about keyword phrases. So what are some of the things we want to do then on our page to make sure that we're found on page 1 of the search engine? So we're going to go through kind of each of these and split these out, but you're going to pick a keyword phrase for the title of your blog post, and that's going to be what your blog post is about. You're going to write great content, and I'm going to go in and we're going to talk about what each of these things means. You're going to use your keyword phrase. So you've picked a keyword phrase for the title, then you're going to use it in a couple of places strategically, and we'll talk about where those are. And then you're going to include similar valuable content, and I'll talk about what that means. So pick a keyword phrase for the title of our post, and this becomes, in many ways, just the foundation for our post. When you title your blog post on ActiveRain, and you could set, if you have a WordPress blog or your website up, you could set it up like this. But when you title a blog on ActiveRain, the title you give the blog post becomes the page title of that page. And a page title is the very first thing that a search engine looks at when they're indexing a page. It's going to tell them what they expect to find on the rest of the page. That page title will do that. And that page title is based on how you title your blog post. So we're going to pick a keyword phrase for the title of our blog post. Now that keyword phrase is going to be that thing that we think people search. And again, you guys, next week we're going to do a whole hour just on keyword phrases, just on picking the right one and how do we do it. I'm going to give you a little bit of idea here today so that if between now and next week you just can't wait, you'll have an idea of some things that you could write about. Now, anytime you're writing a blog post, each post is only going to focus on one keyword phrase or one thing that you want to rank for. And I guess, especially with the people, the newer bloggers, or maybe just people that that aren't really sure what they're doing, what I'll see a lot is they'll try to get one post or one piece of content that they write to rank for a few different things. Like they'll do something like loft condos in, like they think to themselves, well, if loft condos in Belltown, Seattle is a long tail keyword phrase, I'll try to get the people that are looking at Belltown and Ballard and Wallingford. So I'll do my post and it'll say loft condos in Belltown and Wallingford and Capitol Hill. Right? That's not going to work. In fact, if we try to rank for more than one thing with any one piece of content, we're going to end up ranking for nothing. So it's really important that with every piece of content that we create, we understand what our keyword phrase is, and we make sure that that keyword phrase is really just one phrase. Now, as a part of that, the keyword phrase is going to include geography and subject matter. And if you were to look out at search, really every search uses some piece of subject matter and geography. Now, it definitely uses subject matter. It doesn't always use geography, but in our industry, it tends to lead to use of subject matter and geography. And let's talk about that for a minute, okay? So geography plus subject matter. The more precise your geography is, the less precise your subject matter need be. And I'll show you what I mean by that in a second. And the flip side, the more precise your subject matter is when you're picking your keyword phrase for your title, the less precise you need to be with your geography. And it's like, huh? What is he talking about? Okay, let me give you some examples. So you guys can see that there. More specific geographies. When we're thinking of more specific geographies, I want you to think of specific things in your market that are more specific than like a city. Okay, so the city level would be kind of those big head terms, the ones I talked about earlier where there's 6 or 8 of them in any one of our markets. The problem is when somebody searches those terms like condos for sale in Seattle or homes for sale in Renton or homes for sale in Lakewood, those would be the kind of less specific phrases that we're looking at. Who shows up? Google, Zillow, Trulia, Realtor.com, Homes.com, right? Maybe there's one agent in your market that does really well. Maybe there's Redfin, right? Those are the people that show up, but we can get more specific with our geography. So in the first case, the way we get more specific with our geography is to use the name of a condo complex. We're not just going to write about condos in Seattle. We're going to write about the Bravern condos, right, which is like one building in Seattle. Or we might not write about homes for sale in Renton, right, Renton being a city. We might write about homes for sale in Carriagewood, Renton, where Carriagewood is a subdivision or a very specific place, a specific geography inside of Renton, right? We might not write about homes for sale in Lakewood. We might write about homes for sale near JBLM is a Joint Base Lewis McChord. If you were from around here, from that military base, you might search that, right? Homes for sale near JBLM in Lakewood. The more specific geography becomes near JBLM in Lakewood. Our subject matter in there is condos for sale, homes for sale, homes for sale. That's very general. Okay, so we can get more specific with our geography while leaving our subject matter rather general. Or we could flip that around, right? We could have that kind of general geography, Phoenix, Seattle, but get more specific with our subject matter. So in this case, our subject matter for the first example we see there is homes for sale with a mother-in-law suite. That's the subject matter, right? We've gotten very specific with that in Phoenix, right? Condos for sale in Seattle under $300,000. If you dissect that, right, the subject matter portion is condos for sale under $300,000. Again, next week, I'm just going to hammer this stuff into your head next week, so that you walk away understanding, here's how I build a keyword phrase. Condos for sale near Amazon on Capitol Hill, Seattle. You'll notice with all of these examples, I'm giving you guys examples that are very specific to certain things inside of a marketplace. Okay, once we've picked that keyword phrase, okay, and in this case, as we look at this Google result here, and let's break this Google result down for just a second. What we see in the blue there, the part that's clickable, that's from your page title. Okay? So we know that the title of her blog post in this particular instance was Baxter Heights Condos in Anchorage, AK, Anchorage, Alaska. That's the title of her post. That becomes the page title. That becomes the portion of the search result that Google pulls in that's clickable. Now, once you have that keyword phrase, you're going to repeat it at the start and at the end of the blog post. And here's why you do that. I was a horrible English student growing up. I was just not good. And in 8th grade, it might have been 8th grade, I had a really good English teacher. She was great. And one of the things we learned that year is how to write a 5-paragraph essay. And she taught us that in the first paragraph, you tell them what you're going to tell them about. Then you spend 3 paragraphs telling them about it. And then the last paragraph, you tell them what you just told them about. So for Google, when we start our blog post, when we start our written piece of content, somewhere in the first 140, 160 characters, which is about how much you see there in the black writing, right, where it starts October 24th, 2013, Baxter Heights Condos in Anchorage, Alaska, find similar homes for sale to Baxter Heights Condos. That area right there, you need to get your keyword phrase into that first sentence or two of your content. I have you put it at the end because it's a really easy place to get your keyword phrase into the content again. Okay, so we're going to start by telling Google what we're about to tell them about, and then we're going to end by telling them what we just told them about. This also becomes a part of your page description. Whatever you use on your blog post in that first about 160 characters, that's going to become this content here in black. So this is what she's using to start her blog post off. She's using her keyword phrase. Here's what this looks like kind of on a real blog post, okay? So she's written about the lofts on 16th condos in Anchorage. It's a very particular building in her marketplace, okay? And you'll notice she starts the blog post off again. She just restates the keyword phrase. It becomes kind of this header tag, right? These big bold words up there, restating it. And then she just goes in and starts talking about the condo complex. So that's what it looks like, right? We pick a keyword phrase. We're going to repeat that keyword phrase at the start. Now, she's gone on and she's written a bunch of good stuff. And then somewhere at the end of this post, and I'm going to show you guys one of her posts live here in a little bit. Somewhere at the end, she's utilized that keyword phrase again. And she's also got it in here. If you notice kind of that first sentence, it says, see all photos and full details for all the for sale and the lofts condos in Anchorage. That link right there, that's going to be important too, and we're going to talk about that here in a little bit. Okay, so we got our keyword phrase, right? We're going to use it at the start and at the end. Now let's talk a little bit about writing great content, and you do not have to be that guy on the right-hand side there. For you guys that weren't history buffs, that's William Shakespeare. In fact, I just had a guy this morning who emailed me and said, I am not William Shakespeare. I'm not even joking. He wrote that. He said, I'm not a good writer. I'm not Shakespeare. What can I do? You don't have to be Shakespeare. You guys understand your market. You understand your business, and you have expertise in things. Okay? Now, you don't have to be Shakespeare, but you still need to write something that's of value. And so at a minimum, your content should be 200 words. But it's starting to become the case that more is actually better. And I want you to think about our business for a second, because let's say we were Katrina Benton here, and we were going to write about the lofts on 16th condos. Now, there's probably 150 words on this page right here. It's not that much, right? If you were to read just that little bit that's there, would that convince you that this lady's an expert in this condo complex? I don't know. It's close, maybe, right? Like, what would I want to see in there? I'd want to maybe know a little bit about the homeowners association. I'd want to know a little bit about the units, like what's in a unit, what's one of the units like. I want to know a little bit about the fixtures in these places. I'd want to know a little bit about the building itself. I'd want to know a little bit about what was in that area, right? And so as you start to think about what you would actually write about like a particular condo complex, you start to realize that 200 words isn't that much. And in fact, 500 words doesn't end up being that much. And when you really step back and look at a piece of content that you've created and you put it up against other potential results that Google might return based on that same query, you need to really look at and take an honest assessment of, did the piece of content that I just created stack up against those other pieces of content out there on the web about what I just talked about? And here's the thing. This is why the long tail is so beautiful, because out here on the long tail, which a post like this absolutely lives. It lives on the long tail, right? The idea that somebody would search for condos in Anchorage, that happens a lot more frequently than somebody searching for like this particular building. But, and this is a big but, the guy looking for the guy or lady looking for this particular building, they're going to be a heck of a lot closer to actually doing something. And if we take this cumulative approach where she hasn't just written about this building, she's written about a bunch of the buildings in Anchorage, she's written about a bunch of the subdivisions in Anchorage, she's written about homes for sale near a bunch of the schools, homes for sale near a bunch of the employers, the cumulative of that starts to be very, very powerful for her business. But it all comes back to she's giving them good, solid content. She's writing about things that she knows about, and so it's very easy for her to come up with 500 words about the loft condos in Anchorage or the lofts at 16th, because she's probably sold a house in there. She knows a little bit about this area. She's able to tell somebody what it would be like to live there. So we want to try to get over 200 words, okay? But again, I would challenge you, step back after you write something and just look at it and go, first off, if a real person lands on this, are they going to be convinced I'm an expert and want to work with me to buy or sell their next house in this area? And then stack it up against some of the other content that's on the web for that same query and see where you really think you should end up. Because sometimes what ends up happening is you realize, geez, my content's not as good as some of these other ones that Google's returning. I realize why it's not ranking. So you've got that keyword phrase up at the top, right? It's the title. And then you're going to use it one time at the start of your post, and you're going to get it in there one time at the end. In total, I want you to use that keyword phrase 3 to 5 times in the body of the post. And I want you to do it in a manner that matches exactly the way that you phrased it in the title. So in her case, the lofts on 16th condos in Anchorage, she's going to use that exact wording, and you notice she uses it to start it. She uses it in that second sentence for the link, and then somewhere at the end, she's going to get it in there again. She actually got it in there a third time already in that last paragraph there. It says, request a customer evaluation for the lofts on the 16th condos in Anchorage, Alaska. See, it's the exact same wording that she used up in her title. 3 to 5 times you're going to try to get that wording somewhere onto the post. Now, and this becomes almost impossible not to do when it's a blog, when you're sitting down and writing something. You want to use other similar phrases in your body of content. And this is one of the reasons that blog posts do so well in the search engines as opposed to just like static pages on the internet, because when you write a blog post, it's impossible not to use other similar phrases related to what you were writing about, right? I mean, as we come back here and look at the lofts at 16th condos, even in just this little bit, right, she's got words and phrases in here that relate to her keyword phrase, right? Stuff like modern design and feel, right? You'll feel right at home. Now, she gets in here, and we'll look at one of her posts and kind of see what she does with the rest of it. But there's going to be a bunch of words and phrases. There's going to be things like parking garage. There's going to be words and phrases like, you know, open kitchen plan. There's going to be words and phrases like 2 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms. Like, these are all words and phrases that are related to, semantically, right, related to the idea of this particular condo complex or just condos in general. So using other similar phrases, like this is a duh, right? You're almost not going to be able to write something without using these other similar words and phrases. Seems simple enough. So here's something that's absolutely changed in, let's say, the last year, but I believe this is becoming an even more rapid change, and we're really going to start to see this in the next few months. Google now looks at your entire body of content, meaning like they're not just looking at each post you write and deciding whether or not to rank that post based on the post itself. They're now looking at everything you've written and deciding whether to rank anything you've written based on everything you've written. So this is absolute, like if you do one thing going out of today's class, right, you might say, gosh, you know what, I'm going to hold off until the keyword phrase class next week before I write my first blog post. If you do one thing out of today, it's get Google Authorship set up. And this is the way that we allow Google to look at our body of content. They're moving towards this idea of being able to verify who's written what online. And if they can return a result to their consumer, right, the searcher, if they can return a result that is based on a verified author, they're going to do that more frequently than not. So in order to set up Google Authorship on your ActiveRain, it's that first link right there, and Carrie's going to chat it out to you guys right now, activerain.com/Google-authorship. That's how you set your Google Authorship up on ActiveRain. That second link is how you can set Google Authorship up on your own website. Now the lady that did it, she did it on a market leader website, kind of the tutorial, but you can absolutely follow that tutorial and get it set up on your own website. If you have a WordPress blog, you'll need to Google how to set up Google Authorship on WordPress. But you have to get this set up because we want to be able to verify and show to Google we're the person that wrote this. And where this will really start to make a difference is not on your first blog post. This will really start to make a difference on your 50th blog post or even your 5th, right? Because now Google doesn't just see this one post out there from no one. They see 5 posts out there from someone that's a real estate agent in Anchorage. And we have a special bonus class that we're going to do for this round of boot camp that's going to be all about Google Authorship and Google+. And it's called Google Author Authority, and it's what I believe is kind of the next wave of SEO. Okay, so we're going to have a whole class about just this concept of SEO, and there's so much going on here, right? All right, so just from the perspective of writing the blog post, right, we're going to pick a keyword phrase for our title. We're going to use that keyword phrase 3 to 5 times in the body of the post. We're going to use it a couple times, 3 times exactly. Right, we're going to make sure we have really good content with 200 to 500 words, but we're going to understand that the better, I mean, literally, the better our content is, if a real human person was to look at it, the better chance we're going to have of getting it to rank. Okay, now let's talk about a couple kind of commonly missed SEO opportunities, some extra things we can do inside of those posts. Photo metadata. Huh? Photo metadata. This means the description that you give your pictures, right? We want to give, I believe at this point Google can probably tell what you're taking a photo of. However, that image description becomes kind of that verification to them. Like when Katrina wrote about the lofts on 16th condos in Anchorage, you want to make sure that her images have a proper description, right? So a search engine is looking at signals on a page. Very first signal they look at is page title. Then they look at kind of the written content itself. What's in there? Is the keyword phrase? Do I see other similar phrases that I expect to see? Is there depth in the content? Is there sentence structure? Are there paragraphs, right? These are things that a search engine can absolutely understand today, right? Then they start to dig in for those other clues. Where are the other clues on this page? Ooh, there's a photo. What's the picture of? Oh, it's of the loft on 16. That makes sense. That's what the keyword phrase seems to be. That's what the title was. That's what all these words and phrases are related to. Make sure you get a good image description, which would mean make sure you get an image. An anchor text link using your keyword phrase. So we saw in the example that I showed earlier of her blog post, right? She had her kind of restated her keyword phrase, and then her second sentence said, to find more information and full details about the currently available lofts on 16th condos in Anchorage, right? And she had that word, just like you see it on my screen, as the link. The words she used as the link, that's what's called anchor text, right? Whatever words we turn into a link is the anchor text. We want that anchor text to match our keyword phrase. And in a perfect world, that would be the first link on the page. Okay. Now in the last class, when we talk about calls to action and links, I'm really going to drill in on where this links to, why that's important for the page that we're linking to, how you can use these types of links to make your own website perform better in the search engines. But the important thing to understand is getting a link somewhere in the piece of content that utilizes the keyword phrase, right, where the anchor text is the keyword phrase. Now, here's why that's important. As Google goes through and indexes your page, what they're going to see is not only does your piece of content have good information about the subject matter, right, the lofts on 16th condos, you are also willing to let that searcher go somewhere else that has good information about the lofts on 16th condos. And in our case, this would link to our website and to a page on our site, hopefully, that showed condos in that area. Right? But the idea is we let Google know, hey, if you put someone here, we're willing to send them somewhere else that has more good information about this subject matter. Now, and then another link somewhere in your piece of content to a high authority site on the subject or geography. And what does that mean? Well, let's say that I was writing about the lofts on 16th condos in Anchorage. What I would do is I would go out and Google the lofts on 16th condos, and I would find what's another site that Google thinks is a pretty high site for this search query. And then I would link in my blog post to that site. And here's why I do that, because if Google thinks something else is very valuable, it would make sense for me to link to that from my piece of content. Now, what I would never do is link to another agent's site, okay? But in this particular example, maybe they have a homeowners association, and maybe that place has a website. Or maybe there's a property management company that manages this building, and they have a website for the building. That would be something that I would consider linking to. Or maybe because she's just talking about Anchorage, she would link to like the Wikipedia page of Anchorage. Or maybe if I was talking about, you know, loft condos on Capitol Hill in Seattle, I would link to some other page on the internet that talked about Capitol Hill, like maybe there's a Capitol Hill blog or something, right? I want to try to get another link somewhere in my content to a high authority site on what I'm writing about, either the subject matter side of what I'm writing about or the geography side of what I'm writing about. And that link is going to be somewhere lower than my anchor text link using my keyword phrase. Again, this is just another signal to the search engine. We're all about giving them all the right signals. Provide easy access to additional related content. So Katrina does something in her blog post, and so in this case, she's writing about the Baxter Heights condos. And she'll take an opportunity inside of each of her posts, whether it be about the Baxter Heights condos or the lofts on 16th or Brookstone subdivision or whatever area she's writing about, she'll take an opportunity to give you access to a couple of resources that might have been interesting to you had you searched the other query. So if I was searching for Baxter Heights condos, she thinks that I might be interested in a low down payment mortgage. Or she thinks that I might be interested in learning about how to buy a house with a low down payment. And so she takes an opportunity inside of a piece of content she's writing to link or to provide easy access to other content that she thinks the person reading might be interested in. And here's why that's important. As a signal to the search engine, think about this. If Searcher does our query, Baxter Heights condos in Anchorage, and they land on our piece of content, and as they read through it, first of all, they've started to read through it, right? They didn't just bounce out of here and leave because we've got a good piece of content here. Now, as they get into that and they're reading through and they go, "Ooh, yeah, I'm interested in how to buy a house with a low down payment," you bet. When they click off on that piece of content, and now they're over on a different piece of content that you've written, that sends a signal to the search engine that they like this page, right? Especially if they spend time on that other page. Now, when you think about Google looking at the entire body of your content, Google Authorship allows them to know, I wrote this post about Baxter Heights condos. I also wrote that other piece about how to buy a house with a low down payment, and now this particular searcher has come across 2 pieces of content that I've authored, and they've spent some amount of time on each of them, and one piece led them to the other piece. These are all really, really great signals to be sending back to the search engine. Okay? Now, it needs to make sense, right? It needs to relate. Does that link out of this post relate? Like if the title of this post is Baxter Heights condos, does it make sense for her to have somewhere in there that says learn more about how to buy? If I was her and in a perfect world, she would have had it say how to buy a condo with a low down payment. But that absolutely makes sense, right? It makes sense for her to link to that post from this post. It makes sense for those words and phrases to be on this page. Additional media-rich content. Now listen, I'm talking about videos or maps or maybe like a chart or a graph if you were doing a market report or something like that. Don't let this be the reason that you don't create a piece of content. Like if you don't have a video or you're not familiar with how to create a custom Google map, you don't know how to get a chart onto your blog post, like don't let this stop you. Okay, this is just some missed opportunities, some things that we could do that might make our page a little bit more appealing, but it's not one of those things where if you don't have it, you're not going to be able to rank. Okay, it just helps enhance the experience, and it really helps enhance the experience from the perspective of the real person that lands there. And what we have to understand is we're always trying to kind of balance, right, between like writing for a search engine and then a real person might actually read this. And when a real person lands there, one of the signals that we're sending back, and I've talked about this a little bit, I haven't really given it a name, one of the signals we're sending back is how long do they stay on the page, right? Do they bounce, meaning they land there, they don't do anything, they don't interact with the page in any way, and then they leave? Or do they land there, do they maybe scroll down, do they watch a video, do they click another link? The more time we can get them to spend on our content, the better signal that is back to the search engine that the search engine returned them a result that was valuable. So doing things like adding in video. Man, if you, like, this is a video about the Aspetuck Village condominiums in Shelton. Does anybody want to take a wild-ass guess at what this person was writing about and where this video came from? Came out of a blog post she wrote about the Aspetuck Village condominiums in Shelton. Right? Might make sense for her to have a custom Google map in there that pinpointed and showed you where that place was. Might make sense for her to have some kind of a chart in there about past sales in that neighborhood. I don't know. Right? But when you start to think about your blog post in terms of how does it stack up against other content that's out there, these are things that add to the value of a page. Google can absolutely see if you put a YouTube video on a page. That makes it more valuable. Okay. I went a little fast today. Here's what I want to do. Before we get into this, I want to show you guys this lady's blog for just a second. And I want to take you back through, and we'll come across maybe a couple of these posts that she's written. So here's one, homes in Brookridge. So that's going to be a subdivision. Okay, I want you guys to kind of see how a post like this comes together. And then while I'm showing you this, Carrie is going to send you a link right now to a thing called our blogging blueprints. And inside of our blogging blueprints, what we have is we have done a class for you guys on not every, but on a bunch of the different types of posts that you could potentially write. So there's blueprints for writing about a subdivision, like Katrina's done here. There's blueprints for how to write about a condo complex. There's blueprints for how to write about frequently asked questions. There's blueprints for how to write a market report. There's blueprints for how to blog about a particular listing. This is how she came up with this kind of this outline. And as we go from post to post with her, and again, homes and brokerage. So let's look at the post, homes and brokerage, right? She restates it, homes and brokerage in Anchorage, Alaska. She gets her link in here, her keyword phrase as anchor text. And as we come down here, we'll probably, or I hope at least, somewhere in the end of it. Well, actually, let's look at this post for a second. What do we got here? Remember earlier I talked about if I was a consumer and I landed on your piece of content, would you be able to prove to me that you're an expert in this subdivision? Look at what she does. She got a whole couple paragraphs here about the homes, when they were built, how big they are, you know, how many garage spaces they have, price for you know, kind of the average price range. She then gets her kind of her additional information, right? So she talks about the Alaska USA mortgage, or how to buy a house with a low down payment, or the HUD 184 financing program, right? Then she talks about kind of the area. You know, where is this? Where is it located? What's nearby? What are some of the job areas nearby, or the schools nearby, or what's the commuting like, right? She gives them a chance to get some community reports about the schools. Right? This is a good piece of content. Let's go back as we look, as we keep going through here. And I'm actually going to take you kind of way back in her blog to a little bit closer to the beginning. You'll see she does a lot of these kinds of posts, right? Well, let's take a look at this Brookside Manor one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up an incognito window. So what incognito means is Google doesn't know who I am or what I'm doing. They're not looking at my past behavior. And any time that you're doing searches online to try to see where you personally rank, you should use incognito. And Safari has it, and Firefox, and I believe Internet Explorer, but you basically want to be searching kind of hidden from the search engines. Okay, and then what we see in here is going to be some results from her, from ActiveRain, right? When somebody's looking for Brookside Manor townhomes, they're going to find Katrina, and they're going to ultimately find her blog post, right? And this looks very similar, right? Because she's using a formula when she writes these things, and this formula is based on those blogging blueprints that we gave her. Now, any one of these posts, right, it would not be like this boon for her business, right? Let me kind of show you what I mean by that. I'm just going to log in as her real quick, and then I'm going to look at her stats. And your stats area on ActiveRain is how you can see how many clicks your content is getting. And so as we go back in here, let's go way back to some of these. Here it is. This is what we looked at and saw earlier. And these posts aren't that old, you guys. As you look at these posts now, I mean, we're in the 4th month here. So these things are about 6 or 7 months old, kind of this set that she did in this area here, where she was writing about a bunch of condo complexes and subdivisions. Look at these things. 900 clicks, 900 clicks, 1,000 clicks, 700 clicks, 800 clicks. It's the cumulative of this effort that gets her results. All right, so what's next? Well, I want you to come up with 5 kind of long tail phrases you can write about in your market. And for some of you guys, this could be really easy, right? It could be 5 condo buildings. It could be 3 condo buildings and 2 subdivisions. But think about this. Now, this is going to be way easier after next week when we really start talking about things like, you know, how do you break down subject matter and how do you get more specific with it? You can do things like homes for sale with something. Right? And I'm just going to go all into how to break down a keyword phrase. But I want you to try to start thinking about your market in terms of how Katrina's done, how she's really kind of just getting into these real specific nooks and crannies. And I'd love if you'd write about one, right? If you don't start to utilize this information, you're going to lose it. If you've been writing for ages, I encourage you to start to try to work some of these into the way that you do things. Start trying to think about your blog posts in terms of how would somebody find them? How might somebody search? Right? Where I really see this, and again, we'll talk about this a bunch next week, but where I really see this like when somebody writes about their listing. Because what you guys are ingrained to do is to give it the flowery description and the flowery title, like charming cottage in amazing neighborhood. Right? Nobody's ever going to search for charming cottage in an amazing neighborhood. Somebody might search for a cottage-style home on Lake Washington. Right? That would be a better way to kind of position your listing based on how somebody might search for it. So write about something, okay? Hopefully by next week, you'll have at least given this a shot. If you're not a rainmaker on ActiveRain, and a rainmaker allows your content to be made public and indexed by the search engines on ActiveRain, we have a promo right now, arpromo.com/boot24. That'll upgrade your account to a rainmaker for $24. It's the lowest we've ever offered this thing ever. Okay, now once you've written that post, this is what I want you to use, and we're going to send this checklist out to you guys along with the recording either by the end of the day today or first thing tomorrow morning. You're going to use this checklist each time you write a post, okay? You're going to pick a keyword phrase. You're going to use it in the first 160 characters. You're going to use it 3 to 5 times throughout the entire body of the post. You're going to use other similar phrases, and that's going to be impossible if you're, impossible not to if you're blogging, if you're writing about something. You're going to use video or other media, but that's not going to be a reason you don't post something. You're going to include an image description. You're going to make sure you have a clean layout. What I mean by clean layout is good white spacing, good paragraphs. It's not just all one wall of words. Right? Google looks at these things. They can see layout on a page. They know if it looks like garbage. You're going to use your keyword phrase in anchor text. And then next week we're going to talk about keyword phrases. A couple weeks from now, we're going to talk about sharing and kind of the impact that can have on search engine optimization. And then I've got Google Authorship in gold there because you only have to do it once. You set it up once, and it's always in place for the next piece of content that you create. So right now, Carrie is about to chat you out a link that gives you the action items. And I like to call them homework because that's what it is. Carrie wants to call them action items because she thinks that'll make you guys do it. I don't care what you call it. The idea is we've got some things that you can utilize to kind of take your first steps with the information that we gave today. And then she's also going to give you the link to get signed up for next week if you're not signed up next week, where we're going to talk all about keyword phrases. We're really going to dive in, and after next week, you should be able to walk away and say, man, I got enough stuff to write about for the next year in my business. Okay, let's get in here now, and let's see what kind of questions you guys might have had as I was just going nonstop for the last 55 minutes. So Dan says, if we post on ActiveRain and also post it on our own blog, does that hurt us? I want to show you. Okay, again, none of us get to the place where it lives on your WordPress. Now, you would also want to have Google Authorship set up in both locations. Right? We're not trying to trick Google. What they're trying to do with duplicate content is get rid of the guy who comes along, who sets up some program to scrape content off of your site, scrape content off Jenny's site, scrape content off Carrie's site, and then bring it together on his own site. And now he's got all this content, none of which he created. That's where duplicate content is trying to penalize people. That's a great question. So Norma says, I tried to set up the Google Authorship. How do I check to see if it was done correctly? Well, if you go to the ActiveRain post about how to set up Google Authorship, so it's activerain.com/Google-authorship. If you're on this post, at the very bottom of the post, very bottom, and I'll give you guys step-by-step instructions, but at the very bottom, there's a link that says, if you're wondering if you did everything right, you can head over here and run a test. And this is just a page on Google that allows you to run a test. And so what you can do, I'll give you an example here. Let's take one of Katrina's blog posts. So what you would do is you would take a link to one of your blog posts, you would come back here to this little Google tool, you would paste your blog post in there and you would say preview, and then it would show you, right, say, hey, authorship is working. If it's not working, that'll be red, and it'll say no authorship is set up for this page. Adam says, can you show the AR promo site again? Yeah. arpromo.com/boot24. If you already have an account on ActiveRain, make sure you are logged into that account before you go to that URL. That would upgrade your existing account. So another great question. When using multiple images, do you title all the same for each or change for each to match other keyword phrases? Okay, a couple of things about images. First off, I would be very careful about how many images I put into a piece of content. Like, don't overwhelm the person with too many images. I think if you look at like traditional media, places like the New York Times or the Washington Post or CNN.com or wherever, their articles don't generally have 5, 7, 8 pictures. Right? I understand real estate, it's a little more visual. It would make sense to have more images, but just be careful, right? If studies had shown that more images led to people staying on pages for longer, you'd see these major media outlets having more images. Now, if you have, let's say, 3 images, I would make the highest image on the page, I would make match my keyword phrase. The other images, the lower images, I would have used related keyword phrases, not the same, but kind of similar but related. So, like, for instance, if we're talking about the lofts on 16th condos, and Katrina had 3 pictures in there, the first one would probably be a picture of the building, right? That one could be titled The Lofts on 16th Condos in Anchorage. The next one, let's say it was a picture of the inside of one of the units, I would have that one say something like, the open kitchen plan for the Lofts at 16 condos, right? If I had another one that was of the common area, I might say something like, beautiful amenities at the Lofts at 16 condos, right? Slightly different phrase, but related. Great question, Jay. So Elaine says, you mentioned using incognito. So look, I want to respect everybody's time, so we're just getting past the top of the hour. If you guys have to go, completely understand. I'm going to stay here and answer a few more questions if you guys don't mind. So if you want to hang out and have a few more questions answered, I'm going to do that. So Elaine says, you mentioned using incognito when searching ourselves or other sites for SEO. Could you explain that? Did you mean just opening a new window for that search? So incognito is a mode. And let me show you what I mean. When I go to Google here in my Chrome, so I'm on my Chrome browser right now, they know who I am, right? If I go to Google, right, I'm logged in here. This browser has a bunch of stuff cached on it. They know my search behavior. Google knows all the sites I've looked at since I ever had a Google account. Like, they understand who I am. So for instance, they might serve an ActiveRain result up to me more frequently than they would to just anybody in the general public, because I'm on ActiveRain all the time, right? So I want to search in a manner where they don't know who I am. And so on Chrome, and in order to figure out how to do this on your browser, so if you use Firefox or if you use Safari or if you use Internet Explorer, just Google incognito, right? Incognito mode, right? And you can see Chrome, Safari, Firefox, Internet Explorer, right? And it'll give you the instructions on how to get to it. In Chrome, it's really simple. I just come up here to these little deals that are over here. I do a little drop down, and it says New Incognito Window. And when I open that, notice the difference in the windows here. I got this little guy up here, and it's blue. This is just telling me it's incognito. If I go to Google now, look, even though it's the same browser, I'm on Chrome still. I'm not logged in anymore, right? So they don't have that kind of search behavior on me. They don't know the sites that I visited. This is going to give you kind of a clean look at where you rank. Anthony, this is a great question. Anthony says, how fast does it take after posting a blog to hit the search engine? Anthony, it's going to be, I mean, it can literally be as quick as 2 or 3 minutes, and it can take as long as a couple of hours. And that will have something to do with does Google know you? Like if you have authorship set up and you're posting your 15th or 20th blog post, Google's going to see that faster than if you're posting your very first blog post and you don't have any authorship set up. So that's not a science, man. It's kind of a, you know, it happens really fast sometimes. It just depends on when Google's coming through and spidering and indexing content, you know, what they know about you already as an author. Terrace, you're funny. All right, Terrace, I'm glad this was a good webinar. I'm glad it made up. Okay, where do we access the blog blueprints? So here's where you go, activerain.com/blogging-blueprint. Okay, Alicia, that's where you can find these blogging blueprints. And so then each one of them has its own page where it's got a video and it's got an actual blueprint you can download and use for your blog posts. So we've got them for condo complexes, local events and local businesses, hyperlocal market reports, neighborhoods and subdivisions, blogging about your listings, frequently asked questions, homes for sale with some certain feature. All these different kind of classes we've done about how to create specific types of posts. This one here and this one here, if you're a real estate agent, those are the ones you should absolutely be focusing on. If you're someone else, if you're a lender, a home stager, something like that, I would really be looking in this area first. Answers to frequently asked questions. That would be how I would be thinking about a strategy. I mean, I've really focused today on real estate agents. Pam says, would I need to complete authorship for Facebook, Firefox, Safari? No, Pam, authorship is just for your blog or your website. Now, in the 3rd week, we're going to do a class about Google Author Authority. And in that class, we're going to talk about kind of all the other stuff you have going on out there. So you have a LinkedIn, a Facebook, you got a Yelp account, you've got a profile set up on Zillow and Trulia, and all this other stuff happening on the internet that kind of shows that we're in real estate, maybe shows that we're an expert. We're going to talk about how to expose that stuff to Google to make sure they understand who we are as an author and what authority we have on the subject matter we're writing about. But there's nothing you need to do with authorship other than set it up for your blog. Kim says, would you worry about keyword stuffing with images? Kim, if I had used my keyword phrase 5 times in the body of my post, I would not put it in my image. In fact, I would probably back it off. I would only use it 4 times in the body of my post, and then I would use it in one of my images. Here, I would never go over 5 usages of my keyword phrase. Look, if your blog post was 5,000 words long, can you use your keyword phrase 7 times? Yes. But I don't, like, you want to try to use it in a natural manner, and you'll find that it's going to be hard to use it naturally, exactly matching the way you use it in your title, even 4 times in the body of your post. But yeah, I would be worried. I wouldn't want to use that keyword phrase too much. Like if I had 7 images on the page, I wouldn't want to have my keyword phrase like in text on the page 3 times and then 7 times in the images. That would just be too many usages of the keyword phrase. Jenny, yeah, Jenny says, here's an idea. How about create a link to more pictures? Jenny, when in the blog your listings, that's great. That's an absolutely awesome idea. In the blog your listings blueprint, I talk in there about for your listings only having 2 or 3 images with a link back to your website to show them more images, because then you have a chance to capture them as a prospect for your business. So I absolutely am a fan of that, especially when talking about a particular listing. Kathy says, I may be getting ahead, but how does the reader get driven back to my webpage? Okay, this is going to be our last question for the day. If you guys have more questions, what you can do is when we're done here, go to facebook.com/ActiveRain and leave your question on our Facebook page. I will come in and answer your questions throughout the day, any questions I didn't get a chance to answer here. So this is going to be our last question. Kathy says, how does the reader get driven back to my webpage? Great question. Let's come in here and let's find Katrina again. Actually, okay, so we're going to come out, sorry, let's come out here to our incognito. Okay, so is she in here somewhere? Oh, she's in here. She's in like the 5th position in this particular one. Remember last time we saw her in the 1st or 2nd position? Most of her blog posts end up somewhere on the 1st page. But here's what happens, okay? The consumer is 12 months away from buying something. So they get online and they search condos in Anchorage. And they end up, like, where would they end up if they just search condos in Anchorage? They're not going to find, right, there's some paid search up here. As you get down, it's the people I talked about, the Zillow, the Trulia, condo.com, realtor.com, right? As we come down here, we see Keller Williams, homes.com, and then finally we get down here and we actually do see Katrina. And the reason she even shows up for this really general search for her website, and we're going to see this website in some of our subsequent classes, is because she's doing a really good job of linking from her blog post back to her website. But her blog posts themselves don't show up here. And I wouldn't expect them. And the fact that her website does is actually pretty good. So when consumer goes to, let's say they go to Trulia and they start looking around and they're in here and they're a long ways out from buying, right? And they get in here and, I don't know, they look at this condo and they see in here that this condo is somewhere, right? It's in Park Ridge, right? So, and then they go on. They looked at 100 listings today, but they were writing down a couple of the names of the places they liked. The next time, if they come back to Trulia and they can't find the place in Park Ridge anymore, what do? They jump out to Google and they search for the place they just saw that they liked. So Beckett Towers condos. Right? And this is how they would potentially find her blog post. Okay, now that's not a very good example. It's not in one of those first positions, right? Maybe there's some things she could do on here to make it better, maybe not. But this is how people find you. Okay, the long tail gets searched for when people want exactly what they want, right? They're not just looking for condos in Anchorage anymore. They're looking for a particular building. So they're going to find you because they're out there searching, and our content is being surfaced in the search queries that they're doing, right? But it's going to be this cumulative effort. It's going to be because we've written about a bunch of stuff in our market. It's going to be because we have a lot of long tail kind of hits out there. It's going to be because Google looks at the collective of all of our content and says, man, this Katrina Ben lady, she really knows a lot about Anchorage. She's written 150 blog posts about Anchorage. They've all been about these specific areas of Anchorage. She's got her authorship set up. She's doing the right things on the page. And collectively, that's going to start to have an impact on our business. We'll talk about keyword phrases next week. The week after that, we'll talk about Google Author Authority. After that, we'll talk about sharing socially. And we'll finish up our bootcamp series talking about how to generate leads with our blog. You guys have an awesome rest of your week. On behalf of Carrie and Alicia, who are always behind the scenes here at ActiveRain University, my name is Bob Stewart. Bye-bye, everybody.